Welcome everyone to the July/August edition of the ICODR member meeting. It's great to see you all, so many familiar faces. It's been a while since we last got together, but there's just a zillion things happening. So I want to first provide an opportunity for everybody to share any updates they have, and then we're going to dive into Bob showing us some of the cool new stuff he's built into his platform. Welcome everyone. I hope you're having a lovely summer. I do want to start right off the bat with a short reminder about the Future DR conference that's happening at Stanford on September 5th. Well, we were going to have an event which was going to be September 4th, but then that got scrubbed from the agenda just due to some of the Stanford scheduling issues. But we've decided to have a dinner, actually, the night before the conference on September 4th. It's also going to be at Stanford, and all ICODR members are invited. So we've also negotiated a discount with the organizers. Oh, there's Nico. Okay, great. Nico and Jacobo. Good. Thanks for joining in, guys. So just let me know if you're planning on coming. I'm trying to negotiate an online participation option for that conference. The agenda has been released, but the speakers have not yet been released, but it's a pretty impressive set of speakers. Stanford's Codex is leading on it. They said they want to make this a recurring event, and AAA is kind of underwriting it. So should be an interesting event, a nice complement to the ODR Forum series, which obviously the next one's happening in London in the spring that Graham is hosting. So stay tuned for more on that. I'll send it out via the ICODR distribution list. But are there any other announcements or anything anybody wants to share before we dive into the very cool work that that Nico and Jacobo and Robert have been doing? Any other announcements?
Nope.
All right, well, no worries. If anybody has something they want to share, I know Amy's doing amazing work with her Justice Tech program at Ohio, so maybe we need to bring her back to talk about that. And Gary, you've done some amazing stuff at ADR Notable too. So I'm thinking about all of you. If you have any updates, please let me know, and we can book you into a future meeting. But with that, let me hand it over to Bob. I've seen a preview of some of what he's showing today, and it is very, very cool. So Bob, thanks so much for sharing the latest with us.
Sure, no problem. Can people see the screen?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, good. Okay, so topics for discussion will be adjusted winner procedure from game theory. I'm going to shift the current excitement away a little bit from pure AI stuff and talk about game theory, which has been around since the 1950s, and figured we'd implement some of that. Then a brief discussion about improved mathematics, and I'll go into that in a second. And then, of course, demonstration of some of the features of the system. So game theory, of course, is kind of the study of mathematical models in terms of strategic interactions, and kind of started in the 1950s by people like Nash. If you remember the movie A Beautiful Mind, that was about Nash equilibrium. It got modernized in the 1970s by Van Neumann, and then it's progressed in different areas since then. One of the areas is called fair division. And the fair division problem in terms of game theory is basically two parties where one party's in conflict with another in terms of either objects or issues that have to be divided, but it must be divided in a fair way. So the procedure or algorithm was developed in mid-1990s by Stephen Brahms and Alan Taylor, who were professors at NYU at the time. And it applies to things like divorce in terms of division of assets, inheritance, liquidation of the business assets, for instance, labor management negotiation, and of course, international dispute. It's been used in simulation in the Panama Canal Treaty and talked about now in terms of Israeli-Gaza dispute. So the objective in fair division problems is to devise a scheme for dividing objects in such a way that each of the parties or individual players involved obtains a share that he or she considers to be fair. And we all know that's not an easy problem. So the algorithm itself, okay, and I'll demonstrate that in a bit, basically has these properties. It's basically two parties that take 100 points and divide it up among the items they want to distribute. And the algorithm guarantees that the allocation between the parties is equitable. That means both players receive the same number of points in terms of how they value the assets. It's envy-free, that neither player would be happier with what the other received. And of course, Pareto optimal, meaning basically that no other allocation arrived at in terms of how things were valued can make one party better off without making the other party worse. The division of 100 points, though, is not so easy for people. And so we've improved the algorithm by using more decision analytics stuff like pairwise comparison to kind of guarantee that it avoids emotional bias and improves the logical consistency of the relative value of points. So I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. By the way, if there are questions, just put them in the chat box and Colin will hopefully take care of that. In terms of mathematical stuff, you know that large language models have problems with mathematics in general. One, because of the probabilistic nature of LLMs. Basically, they take lots of text and then based on probabilities, they can generate the next word in a sequence considering the context of the previous words. That's basically how LLMs work. The other problem is that they're not very good at a long list of logical steps. And they struggle because they're just not designed to understand symbolic mathematics, although they understand mathematical symbols, but not how to manipulate them. And if there's any small errors in intermediate steps in a long list of logical steps, it can create a big error as the final step. And so those are real problems. So what we've done in our implementation of the support bot, which handles the mathematical problems, is we've created symbolic algebraic agents who know how to handle symbolic mathematics and then basically look at the problem, break it down into logical steps, and then generate a small program to execute in a protected space to solve the mathematical problem and then give the results. And I'll demonstrate that too. So that's what we'll discuss today. And let me start off by going to some demonstrations. Now, I'm going through this pretty quickly because we want to give time to other parties, and there's a lot to discuss. So now, of course, a lot of you have seen this already, at least these parts of it. So what we'll do is take, for instance, as a first example of the just a winner algorithm, is we're going to take a basic divorce kind of dispute. And there are several assessments. So let's just go to the uploaded documents real quickly. And so let's just get a quick summary of the divorce. Summarize the divorce, whatever, in 2 sentences, and bold the names, just so we know who's playing. And so this, of course, is not game theory. This is just AI stuff. And so it's basically divorce of an 8-year marriage. And the key issues are child custody, spousal support, and of course, division of assets. Okay, so display the asset as a table. So the assets that we're talking about were uploaded as an Excel spreadsheet. And it's just going to display what the assets are that are going to be divided up. So, okay. So we've uploaded, discussions about the divorce.
I think I misread your text because I thought it was 11 o'clock PT. I'm actually on a Zoom meeting right now.
Okay, right. Yeah, I might have mistyped it.
Okay, that was an interesting discussion. Okay, so now let's go take a look at the asset division. So what happens is I've shown before, you create simple little objective models. But in this case, what we've done, we've created a model which is just essentially the assets that have to be divided. So if we look at what happens is once you have the assets, the system then creates these pairwise comparisons. So it's asking each party to say, okay, what's more important? In this case, primary residence or investment property? How much more important? And of course, just as a reminder, the reason for doing this quantitatively is that that's a different part of your brain. That's in your neocortex, and we move people away from their emotional part of their brain so that for some short period of time, we can try to get past the emotional stuff, because game theory stuff only works if the players are somewhat rational. And so this will go through each of the comparisons. And when it's all done, we'll go to the last one, these pairwise comparisons. You see, for instance, in this case, and this is, let's say, the wife in the case, these are her priorities: primary residence, then household furniture, then Jeep Cherokee. Okay. So once both parties in the asset division, now we're looking at the results. Again, all of these things are to support and help assist the mediator. They're not directly shown to any of the clients. And there's a lot of reasons for not doing that. So here's the model of the assets. This was a separate model of other things about the divorce. So here we see what primary residence, what the values were placed on these things. And on the opposite end, on the husband, we see investment property was first, then the artwork, then financial accounts. So we see the different priorities in terms of dividing up the assets. Okay, let me move this out of the way. So now we go up to the AI assistant, and we're going to ask it to use the adjusted winner procedure. And basically, we're going to look at the assets. Now, the first thing you can do is look at each of the assets, or in some cases, issues, and see which things are really dividable, which things can't be split. So furniture, residence, not really. Artwork, not really. But whatever in the financial accounts probably can be split. So you can check off whatever things you think can actually be shared where other things may not be. And then we say, okay, let's analyze this and see what would be a fair division in this case. Based on the relative value, remember, that each one placed on each of their assets when they were going through that pairwise division. So first thing that happens is before anything is split, it says, okay, who placed the highest values on what? So in this case, we see party A, the wife, placed the higher value on the residence, the furniture, and the Jeep based on those comparisons here. And on the opposite end, financial accounts, artwork, investment property, and Mercedes was party B, placed the higher value on those things. But when you add up the points on each side, we see that there's a disparity, that party B got more than party A in terms of the value. So then the algorithm goes ahead and says, okay, I'm going to transfer 46% or 7.86 points of financial accounts from party B to party A. And once that is split, we can see now that the points are balanced. So mathematically, this would be a fair division of the assets, where each party is getting their highest value, and then the thing which is the lowest comparison value is split in half. And so then the system will give you some kind of description of what happened in the algorithm. Okay, so that's one case. By the way, just put questions in the chat box. Second case might be a collective bargaining situation. In this case, it's a labor union, and rather than go through we can look at the documents that were uploaded. There's a description of the dispute. We'll just get a kind of a summary of the dispute. We'll just say to summarize it in one sentence, so we don't have to read through this stuff. So it'll go through that document that you uploaded and give you kind of a description of the dispute. Okay, so it's a labor union wants to negotiate benefits, salaries, increase vacation time. And of course, XYZ company is worried about profitability and having to give too much in compensation. And we can say, okay, is the XYZ company profitable? Spelled it wrong, but it'll kind of figure that stuff out. Okay. It's showing based on the spreadsheets and the cash flows. Okay, you can see basically that it indicates that the trajectory is profitability. It's gone through all the financial spreadsheets. So, okay, so now we'll go back. And if we look at the issues were ranked in a certain way. Remote work policy was the most important issue for the labor union, then compensation, then benefits, and then working conditions. In terms of the company, which was the dispute was with, compensation was the biggest issue they were worried about because of profitability, then benefits, then training and development, working conditions, job security, and remote work happened to be the least thing they cared about, where in this case, it was the biggest thing they cared about. So if we go through the adjusted winner algorithm again, we can say, okay, we're going to look at these two assessments of values, relative values for each. And we're going to say, okay, it's collective bargaining. So let's just say everything is negotiable and possibly splittable. And so we'll just ask the system to look at these things, look at the relative values, and then try to come up with a fair division of either who drives the asset or who might transfer the control from one to the other. And so here we see basically the initial division. The biggest thing, as you saw from the pairwise comparison, that the local union valued remote work policy the biggest thing than some of these others, but Party B valued compensation the biggest and then seemed to have gotten the higher value for all of these other things because remote work and compensation took up a large portion of the division for the labor union. However, that creates, when you add up the points on each side, that creates an imbalance. So then the algorithm says, okay, I'm going to transfer 41% of benefits from Party B to Party A to balance it, transfer working conditions from B to A, and then transfer job security from B to A. So that would create, that's the only combination that will create a balance. And so now you can see that remote work policy, Party A, Party B drives compensation, benefits was split between the two parties to negotiate, and then working conditions, job security, Party A to drive that, and then of course, training and development to Party B. Okay, so that's an example of using the algorithm for issues instead of just pure assets. So that I can do more, but I don't want to take up too much time. Now, let me talk a little bit about the mathematics stuff. So we'll go to the support bots. Now, the support bot, as I've demonstrated before, you can ask it questions about system, you know, how do I, whatever, how do I create a questionnaire? So it'll go do that. But in the meantime, so it'll it's been trained basically on the system, and basically gives, and you can, of course, detach the sidebar into a separate window. So it'll give you instructions on how to use different aspects of the system. It also gives you, of course, the citations and a bunch of other information. Now, in terms of math problems, let me just go back to this. Let's take an example of a math problem. Here's one, which is, okay, it's a bond, BBB rating, has a face value of $1,000 and a coupon rate of 8%, paying semi-annually. The bond will mature in 10 years, and the risk-free rate projected to be 2% with inflation averaging about 3%. The question is really, what is the bond worth today? So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to give the support bot the problem. And you can see we put the whole problem into the support bot. And then we're saying, okay, here's a mathematical problem. So it realizes it's a mathematical problem. So it's going to give you the steps, and then it'll calculate the present value. Now, depending on how busy the network is. Anyway, the present value is $875. So let's look at another problem. Here's one. This is about a labor dispute. It says, okay, a labor dispute has risen. It's a distribution, sorry, of 20 laborers to 4 different construction jobs. The first job is considered to be very undesirable and requires 6 laborers. The second, third, fourth jobs require 4 to 5 laborers, respectively. The dispute arose over alleged random distribution of laborers to the jobs that somehow placed all 4 members of a particular ethnic group on job 1, which is the least desirable. So the question is, does this really random, or was this some form of bias? So let's give this problem to the support bot. It realizes that it's a mathematical problem, so it's going to use the skill for mathematics. And so it's then going to calculate the probability of that happening, okay? And okay, basically probability of it happening is 0.3%. So this is especially low, suggesting that such an outcome purely by chance is quite unlikely. So it'll do all those calculations. Let me just refresh my screen for a second. And we'll do one more example problem. We're having a little bit of an issue getting back. Hold on, that's the wrong place. Let me get the support bot. Okay. In fact, let me take this out so that maybe it's more visible. We'll just open it up a little bit. Yeah, sometimes during the day, some of the servers get a little busy. Let me just do one more as an example. So here's an example of a company produces 2 types of products, and the production of each product requires 2 types of resources, labor and material. The company has a maximum of 100 hours of labor and 80 units of material available. And then how much, the question is, how the customer wants to maximize the profit by determining the number of units of each product to produce. So this is kind of, in a way, a linear algebra problem, but it's just another example of the flexibility. Oops, let's say, forgot to tell it what to maximize. So now it's going to just maximize those. Yeah, the network is very busy. So anyway, produce 15 units of A, 17 units of B, so forth. So there's really no limits to the number of practical problems that the system can solve mathematically, because it's not using AI for that part. It's using more symbolic mathematics skill or agent. And that agent then creates a small Python program that executes in a secure space and then produces the results. So again, that's what you can see in the advance in the mathematics. And so what I'll do now is hand it over to Colin, because I said I would get this done in a half an hour.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Wow, every time I see you demo your platform, I feel like I'm looking at the future here. This is incredible to see this assistant, doing all of this advanced math and thinking about, wow, how could this really change a process, So there's some great questions in the chat. Let's surface a couple of these, and then I'll head over to you, Nico, and you and Jacobo can show some of the work that you've been doing too. But Chuck asked the question, does the model depend on objective value assessments of different factors? And if factors with disputed subjective value assessments may make that difficult less reliable? So like, I think a lot of your math problems, Bob, implies that there's agreement on exactly what the input should be to the math, but it seems like there may be a dispute over the inputs as well. So what do you think about that?
Well, when you say dispute over the inputs, I'm a little unclear what that really means.
Yeah, Chuck says, for example, in the labor case, how would a company agree to allocate full control of working conditions and job security to labor? That's what he said. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think what would happen here is, and again, you have to interpret the what we say by Pareto efficient mathematically and the reality of let's say a collective bargaining dispute, in which case what you would do when you're dividing up issues is it might be who drives that particular issue. It's not necessarily the final result, but if you're looking for who's, in terms of the bargaining, who's driving the issue, then that would be the fair division rather than necessarily any exact result that wound up in, let's say, here's the compensation based on this, right?
Yeah. It does seem
So,
to me you could change the model as well. Like if one party says, well, those numbers aren't accurate, the inputs to the model aren't accurate. Okay, well, let's run it this way with the way party A thinks the numbers should be, and then let's run it this way with the way party B's numbers should be, and let's see what the outcomes are. I mean, to have an AI come in and assess the value of a disputed asset, it might be that the two generated outcomes are close enough that they say, oh, wow, I thought, I've seen disputes like that where people haven't done the math. So they think that
right.
the difference in their positions is wide when in fact it's small.
Yeah, and the same thing applies to division, let's say, of divorce assets in a divorce, because every jurisdiction may have different rules what they consider fair.
Right.
Usually based on market value, but not necessarily based on relative value of each of the assets. So this is based on the relative value as people think they're important. And that's why it becomes NV3, because this is what we like the most. And
Right.
when you're doing that assessment, you might be taking into account the market value in your head, but
Absolutely.
this is the relative value. Yeah.
Well, I think Gary went here and I went there too, thinking about the family applications in this, because we're spending a lot of time thinking about child support and spousal support and things like that. Gary said the application in the divorce reminded me of Asset Divider, a program that was sort of a second generation of Family Winner. And then he posted an article from Professor Bellucci about that. I mean, I think that's a really interesting aspect of this, is saying, okay, well, hey, let's just ask the AI and let's see what, and it can come up with a range potentially. You know, we also made so did you spend some time playing with Smart Settle, Bob? Because I thought there were some synergies there. This is like an AI powered Smart Settle in a sense, where it models each side. So I don't know, have you thought about the overlaps between Ernie's approach and yours?
Yeah, I looked at, played a little bit Smart Settle. Smart Settle, their approach is, to favor the person or the party that makes the first advantage move.
That's right.
Right.
Because they're
That's
in the
kinda-
negotiation. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Now this, of course, works with our online negotiation as well, right? You can just do it from online negotiation and then see which ones were split. Then you could negotiate the split, things like that. So but this tries to, again, this is focused on giving the mediator a set of tools that says, well, this would be the fair division. Now
Right.
you can
Right.
sit and negotiate what you want, right? But this is the optimal fair division based on their relative value of things.
Right.
So
It seems inevitable to me that that's going to become more commonplace. And then Hako posted, and I'll open it up for voice questions in a second, but he said for the math problems, is this following a COT prompt for the step-by-step of the algorithm, or is it solving the problem in a separate system and just exposing the results? Hako, what do you mean by COT? Did I miss that? What does that mean?
COT is an acronym for chain of thought prompting.
Chain of thought. Okay. Yeah. So Bob, do you have an answer to that?
yeah, it's not done with chain of thought prompting. Okay, what it does is it breaks down the problem and then generates an actual Python program to execute in a separate secure space. And then it takes the results of that and then uses some AI to just format the result, but it generates basically, a Python program. So.
Well, Gary, what did you want to say?
I just was going to follow up on that article that I posted. I mean, just to give you a quick summary that I thought was really interesting and applicable here is, I guess, first version of the software they did a sort of a Pareto optimization of assets, but it was based on the subjective value that each participant put on the real property, right? And what they determined after the round one was that if somebody assigned a high value to something because it was it had some subjective personal value, that the end result was not financially equal. Because, I may put more value on good old Aunt Della's, furniture or something in the house, and I rank it very high, where it has very low cash value. So then they did a second version of the software, which essentially just added in a cash transfer at the end to balance the subjective value of the personal property being split with the objective value of the personal property being split. That's kind of an interesting, way to accommodate the somewhat non-rational components of the valuation people may have put to the property being split.
Yeah, and I think that's why instead of just dividing up 100 points, which was the original algorithm, doing the pairwise comparison forces you to be logical about the relative value in your head, right? So it takes you somewhat out of that emotional stage of valuing the personal property and makes you a little more logical. But like you said, some jurisdictions, some states require that it's based on the market value and what's the dollar value of the assets, and you have to do something maybe to correct that to fit within those rules. But again, this is based on relative value. So.
Well, I have to say, Bob, I think this is incredible. I will say the more I played with Smart Settle, the more I was impressed with it, and I want to play with your algorithms as well. I'm a big fan of game theory. When I was studying conflict resolution at the Kennedy School, they made me read all these game theory books, and I'm like, why do I have to read this? And then I read it, and this is it. This is dispute resolution in a nutshell. This is mathematical modeling. This is Howard Rafa. This is the core of all we do. The challenge, and I think Marjorie talks about this in her book too, and John Landy's talked about this in his book, is getting parties to understand the complexity of the math. Like you can have a computer that spits out a number, but if they don't understand how that number is generated, then it's sort of like, okay, what's the real value of this here? It's amazing the power of the system that you have, but bringing the parties along with you as a facilitator as you go through that. Maybe this is all, again, I think the way you've designed Next Level is that the third party is doing a lot of this and then sort of cleaning it up and sanitizing it before communication to the parties. But it's,
Right.
as I say, I feel like we're looking at the future here. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, of course, that's a challenge. Technology and the legal industry is a challenge to begin with, independent of whether or not, if someone's interested and wants to see a mathematical proof of this, I'll show it to them, but I don't think anybody will understand it. So
Right.
The question is, how do we, and this is my question all along, how do we get people out of the 1970s into the current age of what could be done in dispute resolution to really assist the mediator? It's not going to eliminate the need for the mediator, but it's going to have to raise it up another level, and so that people can see that there are lots of techniques available for dispute resolution. We just haven't been using them. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue actually to Nico and Hako. I want you to show off some of the cool stuff you guys have been working on. I think it's very much in line with what Bob said. This also is a taste of the future. So why don't you take the conch and share your screen and show some of this off?
Thank you so much, Colin, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to showcase some of the work that we've been done over the last year in order to complement what we understand to be the best practices and the best standards for ODR. We believe that the standalone ODR platform is extremely useful, but then if we can include add-ons or if we can include new features, I think the process will be much more effective. And we've actually worked on a negotiation, and we've worked on artificial intelligence tools that will enable any ODR platform, not just the REDEK platform, to really contribute to the goal, which is basically to have solutions for people who are actually seeking justice. So what we're going to show you today are standalone features. So we can include them as a part of an ODR platform, or we can just have them alone. And we've been advertising this as a new capability of REDEK as of late, with the possibility that if people want to start their digital transformation, they can adopt one of these tools, or if they want to go all the way to ODR, they can have the ODR platform plus these features. So without further ado, I will leave Hako Gomez. Hako has been the one who's been developing these tools since the end of 2022. And this is the result of a lot of hard work and very well-used intelligence. So thank you very much, everyone. And Hako, have the floor.
So thank you very much, Nico, for the introduction. I'll show you 3 very short demos on some of these features Nicolas mentioned you. Shamefully, a lot of these demos are in Spanish because our core is in Colombia, so most of them have been built on Spanish. But I'll try my best to give you the most accurate translation for everything. This first demo that we're doing, it is a document classifier. The use case for this document classifier, you can imagine very high volumes of document reception by public entities. So they are receiving thousands or even hundreds of thousands of citizen reviews every day. And a lot of the time, those citizen reviews, they need to be classified into different workflows. And this is exactly what it's doing. So this first part here is a very simple like submit form. This submit form can of course be customized with the client needs, but just for the demo, here is a simple one with the name and your email. So here I'll just add my email, my name and my email address. And here I can submit different types of documents. For you to see, here we have a mixture of legal documents alongside some other different documents. I'll just very easily show you one of these. So for example, this one, if we open it, you'll be able to see that this is some academic paper, right? And the idea is if I go to the submission form and I submit these academic paper, what it's doing here, it is going through the document, it is vectorizing the document, and it is classifying the vectors of the document. And it is result, as you can see that here it says, okay, this is not a relevant document. This is not one of the documents that needs to be reviewed, and it's assigned a score of 0. This model has two very particular features in it. Is one, it's going to give you a score that's going to tell you how sure the model is on its own prediction. So you'll be able to customize the workflows around the idea that perhaps sometimes the model is not going to be 100% sure of its classification, and it might need for some human review. On the other side, sometimes the model is going to be absolutely sure of what it's saying, and you can have it go through a more automated process. So this is an example of a clearly non-legal document that it is not relevant for the public entity, but we can also submit one that is in fact relevant. Let me show this one to you very quickly. This is what in Colombia we call derechos de petición. This is essentially a formal request that you can make to a public entity for it to answer some of your questions. As you can see here, this is a document that complies with all of the characteristics of one of these reviews. And these are very, very, very common. So if I go through the submit form, I submit this one, and I go through it, what you'll be able to see here is that it's somewhat quickly telling me that it is one of these reviews documents, and it has a score of 91. So that means that it is very, very sure of its own classification. This also has a configuration module. So in here, you're able to settle or to set how the workflow goes for different events. What you can do here is you can add an email list where you want the document to be sent. And you also can have some customizable features, such as if you want it to be distributed between several team members, or if you want all the team members to receive the email. It also supports webhook integration. So you can ping a webhook to activate an automatic workflow. And as I stated before, you can customize it around the idea of how sure the model is for it to work. So this is the first demo. The second demo that
perhaps one thing just to clarify, this will be very useful for companies who are considering implementing ODR, like a private ODR, meaning that if you have a workflow of complaints in your website, and then sometimes they're not complaints, or sometimes they have to go through your ODR system, well, then you can classify those documents or the requests, and then it will make the work much easier. What we've noticed, particularly with big companies or public agencies in Latin America, is that they have a huge flow of documents or requests, petitions, complaints, and they have lawyers full-time dedicated to making that classification. So it's extremely inefficient, and it's very costly. So it's a simple solution to a much more complex problem that they have, or that they shouldn't take human attention, at least.
Yeah, just to pipe in on that as well, Hako, just to, I've seen a lot of ODR systems that could benefit from this kind of document typing. If somebody just grabs a bunch of documents off their hard drives and drags it in, to have an AI go through and scan these documents and say, hey, this is what we think each of these documents are, and here's the confidence interval. That saves an enormous amount of time, especially for a mediator, because then they can go in and say, okay, great, this was uploaded, this is exactly what I needed. So please, Hako, continue.
Sure. One last clarification here is all of our tools, they have they're API compliant, and as you can see here, they do a JSON output, so they're very easily integrated with different systems across different languages and different tech stacks. Now going into the second demo, this is a demo for, it is a retrieval augmented generation system.
Paco, if I could just pause you for a second, it looks like there's something covering the bottom portion of your screen. Is there like an overlap or something that you can drag off? We're seeing gray for like the bottom half. I don't know if it's another window that's overlapping, something like that. Now it seems like the gray has moved to the top.
Oh, it's the zoom overlay. Okay.
It's the zoom overlay. Yeah. I don't know if it's possible to share your whole screen or something like that. It's fine if you can't, because we can't see the top half of your screen.
Let me see if I can go, because it should be sharing the whole screen, but let me see, go to this one. Does this remove the overlay?
No, we still have the gray on the bottom, but we can see the top. So just proceed.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Cool. So this is a retrieval augmented generation system that is meant to be integrated with different files. So for example, the demo that we have right now, it has all of the Colombian Constitutional Court judicial settlements. And what you can do here is ask it about any particular topic that you have in mind. So for example, I'll have to do the demo in Spanish because this is all set in Spanish, but I'm going to ask it about the damage to the ecosystem. And again, this also works with vector technology, but what it's doing here is searching for the closest quotes that it can find alongside all of the case law from the Constitutional Court. And it's going to output me direct quotes from those judgments. And also a little bit of some context that is being generated with LLMs. We particularly work with Meta AI models. And well, this usually takes about somewhere around 30 to 40 seconds. You can see here how it outputted is, you can see that it is telling me in the very specific case law. And if I search that case law, I can see that this is a direct quote. So it reduces the hallucination risk significantly. Also, on the more technical side, we have implemented something that we've called like micromanaged vector systems. And the idea is that we've run the clustering algorithm through all the vectors that we collected from the Constitutional Court, and we've grouped them together in, you can think about it as topics. So it's very quick to search through these small databases and also to find very accurate results. Also on the technical side, we have
let me just ask a question. This is a RAG LLM powered by Meta. Is it the new Llama? Is it 3.1?
The demo you're seeing here is Llama 3.1, but not the big version, but the medium-sized version.
The medium-sized version. Okay, got it.
And it's also an instruct model. We work with instruct models.
Very cool. Yeah, this is amazing.
And yeah, it's like what I was telling you, it's powered by this micro managed systems, which make it really accurate. And also we have provisioned it that we can plug it into any knowledge database that you have. So if you have, I don't know, a Google Drive filled with PDF documents, you can very easily integrate it into the system, and it's going to answer questions exclusively on the content of those PDF documents. So going back to the ODR platforms, what you can do is have a very easy way for mediators or arbitrators that are jumping into a case to get familiar with that case. Because it's only going to answer you based on the files that are in such case.
Great.
And now finally, for the last demo that I'm going to show you today, I think I need to change my screen for a second. I don't know if anyone can confirm me that you're seeing the new screen, not the one that I was sharing.
Unfortunately, it's got the same problem with the gray scale over most of it. So we can only see the upper right-hand corner. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now we can see the top half.
Okay. Okay. So this is, and it's very in line with what I believe Robert was exposing. This is not a completely AI-powered negotiation system. It is follows a game theory paper on automated negotiation. if anyone is interested, I can copy and paste the link to the paper that we loosely followed for this negotiation algorithm. But how it works is that in here, I believe that you should be able to see that I am able to set up an automated agent to follow through a negotiation. So here I can give him some parameters. Here I can say that the max amount that I'm willing to pay is $5,000. I can also set up a minimum amount, let's say 1,500. And you can have it support different negotiation styles. Here we have an aggressive negotiation style and a conservative negotiation style. This will make it so that the jumps in between the offers is going to make are different. Here I'll just set it up to aggressive, which is the default. And here I can set up some of the methods that I'm able to negotiate. So for example, I'm going to say that my preferred method, it is store credit, but both store credit and cash are available options. And if I set up here the negotiator, it's going to provide me a link. I can share this link with the person that I am doing a negotiation with. And here I can see that it's going him to ask for a submission. So I can say, okay, we settled, let's say that he's going to ask for $6,000 and he wants them in cash. So if I submit the offer, it's going to give me a counter offer based on this algorithm. Here he has counter offered me 4,800 in cash, and as the user, I'm able to either accept, deny, or present a counter offer. And based on whatever I decide to do, it's going to show me a different result. So for example, if I say I'm going to deny the offer, he's going to try and convince me. He added $100 into the pot, so it says $4,900 in cash, and I can, for example, here say I accept it, and here it's registered that it has accepted the negotiation. I can go back home, and here I can see that it is already saved the negotiator, so I can reuse different strategies that I already crafted with this negotiators, and I can start a new negotiation. And if, for example, this time I'm going to ask for 5,500, and I'm going to say that I want them in store credit. If I submit the offer, he's again trying to find this middle point between the offer that I am making and the configuration values that have been set, and it is trying to interpret all in the best, or trying to find an agreement between the parties. As it said before, it's following a game theory algorithm, and we've also looking into adding some LLM functionality, very particularly on the idea that LLMs could be useful to make the offer more explainable to the user. So imagine that in here, instead of having this sort of robotic UI in which I'm just giving a number, the LLM is going to be able to provide us with a more human-like approach, stating as why for 4,900 is a adequate value, and so on and so forth. So those are the three small systems that we've are demoing for you today. I hope that the inconvenience of the gray screen wasn't too much.
No big deal. We saw it all. Yeah. Thank you, Hako. This is so cool. And you said that these services are available via the API, so they could be integrated into other ODR platforms as well, right?
Yeah. Actually, we've designed them in such a way that the integration with any platform, it is particularly easy, because one of the challenges that we face here in Colombia in particular is that public agencies have a very strong IT teams that are already committed with technologies, and they are not willing to change those technologies. So we've had to adequate it to be easily integratable with Microsoft tools, also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with all of those kind of tools.
Very, very cool. Well, I think both of these demos are blowing my mind. Let me open it up and see. Do anybody have any questions for either Nico and Hako, or for Bob, or maybe in combination of the two presentations? Well, I will just say for myself, while people are thinking here, that idea of an AI intermediated negotiation, the ability to bring in these tools. I think, Bob, you were way ahead on integrating those tools. And I love how seamlessly now it lives in your platform. I also love the idea of these sort of targeted AI-powered services that could be plugged in via API. And I think that parties are going to get more comfortable with the idea that these resources are available to them. But I think the demos that we saw today, again, it's like, just think about the power that you're bringing into the room. Just think about the smarts of the fourth party in terms of being able to read all of this legal documentation, you know, from Colombia, and then someone says, well, what does the legal documentation say about this? And boom, you can surface it right in the room. Or Bob saying, you know, look, here's a map of all of the relative valuations of your positions in this negotiation, and here's a solution that can maximize value to both sides. And, you know, even calculate complicated mathematical functions, like what's the value of this disputed asset, which the parties probably don't understand what the value of that is. Like, this completely changes the dynamic with the third party. I think that's what we're seeing here. And I think, you know, it's about getting the ease of use and intelligibility. I think these tools are going to be more effective if parties really understand why they're recommending what they recommend. But how do you guys respond to that?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think that's part of the issue is getting people to understand it. But when you start using advanced tools like different forms of expert systems or AI or game theory, its explainability is, of course, an issue because it's a discipline that most, let's say, attorneys or mediators have not studied. Okay, it's and of course, it's one of the reasons why I focus on it, because that's how you augment the skills of the mediator, by giving them the ability to give you solutions to problems that, one, they might have had to go ahead and get other experts in. But even if you bring in other experts, someone has to explain it. And
well, you got to explain the expert. You know, why are they an expert?
Yeah.
Why is this a recommendation? How do you know they're unbiased?
It's the same problem.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any quick solution to it. But I
Yeah.
think that as long as, let's say in the mathematics, we can show all the steps, in calculating the stuff, right?
Somebody
So,
could vet it if they wanted to, right?
so they could go vet it if they want to. Yeah.
Yeah, Nico and Hako, with these tools, do you see that eventually this is, oh, David, I don't know if you need to jump off.
No, I was gonna
You have a
make-
question? Oh, yeah,
when-
please.
When you were
Please.
done, I couldn't find the
No,
raise.
no. That's fine. David, ask your question, please.
Well, I'm sort of a crasher, although you did invite me, Colin.
I did
I'm
invite you.
sorry.
I did invite you. You're not a crasher at all. You're welcome here.
And I did have the pleasure of a private tour with Bob of his system, which is really incredible. But after hundreds of mediations as the mediator, and a lot of those, I pull out some math stuff and try to assign math to the positions of the parties. You do get the glaze over. So I think Bob and you, Colin, just hit the practical problem on the head, is convincing parties about the transparency and the efficacy of the math and its application to the dispute. So I'm wondering if there's any way to create something in an AI context that allows the mediator / the parties to sort of get a tutorial on what we're doing here, because they'll never be able to follow, on the fly what Bob just went through. So is there any kind of NLP interface that we can create for parties to say, we're going to be using this mathematical tool and here's how it works? And they can input questions about it. It would sort of walk through a system in an automated way so that it takes away some of the mystery from it and explains why the math is not just sort of, as George Bush said, fuzzy math,
I actually think that this is a very feasible solution. One of the most used case for AI is in support tickets for IT platforms. And what they do is they simply put the documentation, or they feed the documentation into a large language model so that the model can answer questions of the documentation of the particular platform. And that echoes to me the exact same idea that you just mentioned. We can input to the model the complex mathematical reasoning and ask it for it to deliver it in a way that it is very friendly towards users. I believe that it is a very, very easy solution to implement.
Yeah, please, David.
No, it'd be essentially having the model explain to the users and the party what it's doing and how it's processing the information that it's given, and how the outputs were derived in a very transparent way.
Yeah, so if you look, for instance, at the results, if you read the text that gets generated on the adjusted winner thing, it explains what it did, what was initially out of balance, how it transferred it. and why it transferred it. And so some of that's already explained. As far as logical steps in the math, that becomes a little more of a problem for people who don't have the math background, because
They can't follow it. Yeah.
you know, it's just like trying to explain inductive reasoning to somebody. It's not going to happen.
Well, I was looking at the math your AI was spitting out, and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I really know what's going on here, but I trust that the algorithm does. David, before we break, can you just say something about the program at Duke? I think everybody'd love to learn a little bit more about it. If you just give them a link.
Yeah, so it's Rails. It's at Duke. Rails is an acronym for Responsible AI and Legal Services, and it's got a number of working groups. I'm on one that is dealing with intermediated services, and we kind of published a sort of a methodology to assess the risks and availability of various services. But I won't do it justice to try to summarize it. So I would encourage people to go to the Rails site, and if you have any interest in it, to sign up for a working group. But we're marching towards a sort of a gathering in November, right around Election Day, at Duke, where we're going to talk about some of the work product that's been generated from it. But it's the area of focus for our work group, as I said, was on intermediated services, and we're looking at, or at least I'm now starting to look at, sort of ways to quantify the risks. The obvious risks are, hallucinations and that kind of thing. But, when you compare the risk of that versus people having no legal service, no legal backup, no legal help at all, which is 90% of people in the United States in the civil context, you got to weigh the risks. So I'm actually now trying to think about the math surrounding that in ways that we quantify it, so we have a sliding scale acceptance, if you will, of risk based on accessibility, current accessibility. But like I said, there's more to the project and the other working groups than I can give justice to now. But it's,
well, maybe we'll bring you in, or some other Rails people, because it's definitely a sibling project to what we're doing at ICODR too. So it'd be great to hear more about everything that's going on at Rails. And I do urge everybody at ICODR to check out Rails. David pointed me in that direction, and it's amazing, the wealth of resources there. Okay, I know we're over time. I want to thank Bob. I want to thank Nico. I want to thank Hako, not only for the presentations, but also the great work you're doing. I mean, this is, as I say, this is a glimpse into the future. This stuff's going to be commonplace. We're going to record this and put it up on YouTube, and our grandkids will go and watch this and say, what is this? This is the simplest thing I've ever seen in my life. But to me, I feel like we've just gotten a glimpse as to where everything is going. So thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for information on our next meeting. And please come to Palo Alto and join us for future DR if you can.
All
okay?
right.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.